Welcome to Soccer in 60, presented by the Empire Strykers. Get ready for your weekly look at all the pro soccer teams in Greater Los Angeles. We've got all the news and analysis you need, from LAFC and the LA Galaxy to the Empire Strykers, Angel City FC, and Orange County Soccer Club. Now, buckle up and enjoy Soccer in 60. May old acquaintances be forgot and never brought to mind. That is the classic saying used on New Year's. And Happy New Year's to each and every one of you out there. In modern English, what I just said, it means don't forget old friendships, honor the journey, carry the good with you into the new year. And a more modern version should read as this: may we honor where we've been and stay open to what's ahead. And what's ahead, you ask? I'll tell you. The fastest paced soccer show in SoCal, Soccer in 60, brought to you by SAC Health System. On this show, we take a look at the LAFC squad, the LA Galaxy, Orange County Soccer Club, Angel City, and the Major Arena Soccer League's Empire Strykers. My name's Christian Filliman, better known as Philly, and yes, that was my voice on the intro you just heard. And joining me, the original Soccer in 60 gangster himself, the longest tenured member of the show, Timmy K. Timmy Kolotz. What's up, dude? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Philly, my man. It's so good to be here, and I've been here so long. My hair used to be black when I started this show.
I'm going to recycle a joke I've used in the past. I've been around since Burger King was the prince. And look, on today's show, we've got a fun one for you. We get to rap with a few heads today. And what I mean by that is we engage in conversation with the LA Times' Kevin Baxter. He comes on to chat about Angel City FC, LAFC, and obviously the Galaxy. And then we bring in Empire Strykers and former MASL goalkeeper of the year, Claysson De Lima, to chat about the Strykers as they played the Milwaukee Wave on the road. And of course, we'll touch upon all the other usual suspects. But before we do, we need to hop aboard Omnitrans in partnership with the Empire Strykers. Experience the thrill of game day with Omnitrans. Be in the heart of the action at Toyota Arena and let Omnitrans take care of the ride. Simply download the Transit app to catch your bus and enjoy a stress-free trip to cheer on your Strykers. And make every moment count at the arena. Ride with Omnitrans to hit your next Strykers game up. All right, folks, I mentioned that we're going to be talking with the LA Times' Kevin Baxter. Let's go into that dialogue real quick. Take it away. Production, I'll see you on the other side of the interview.
All right, thanks, guys. Sometimes you have a guest on who has so much expertise that you don't get to all your questions. That's when it makes sense to have the same guest on 2 weeks in a row, especially when it's an absolute legend of sports journalism. Kevin Baxter covers soccer and hockey for the LA Times. As I said last week, he has covered 7 World Cups, 5 Olympic Games, a Super Bowl, and let the record show 7, not 6, World Series. I sold him short on that one last time. Mr. Kevin Baxter, welcome back to Soccer in 60.
Thanks for having me. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you. Always great to have you on. Let's dive into it. We have a lot of ground to cover, as always. As I said, we discussed a lot last week. We didn't get to everything. We talked about head coach Alex Strauss, Angel City head coach Alex Strauss last week, and the job he's done so far. Today, let's take a look at the even bigger picture, right? ACFC has had a very tumultuous 15 months or so off the field. Head coach Becky Tweed leaving, not being replaced until June permanently. There was a major ownership change. The GM left. A new sporting director / GM comes in, also a new assistant GM, not to mention a new head coach finally. How would you rate all those changes, and how do they set up ACFC for the future?
Well, I think it's too early to tell. I mean, one of the things they're doing with the new front office and the new coach, Alexander Strauss, the fourth coach, if you include interim coaches, the fourth coach they've had in 4 seasons. Only one winning season, only one playoff appearance. It's kind of starting over again. And I think you saw a lot of transactions toward the end of last season, the middle of the summer, toward the end of the season. 27 transactions in all last calendar year, or the first 10 months of the year. So it's clear that they're trying to restructure. I think they have the club now, the roster now. I don't think they're finished, but I think they're close to having the roster now that the new front office wants, that Alexander Strauss wants to play with. It puts a lot of pressure on the team this year. I mean, we know that attendance is down. Interest in the team is down again in 3-4 years, and they made one playoff appearance and lost that game. Fans are getting impatient, and so there is a lot of pressure on the team to win this year. The front office has said this is a 3-year process, that they think it takes 3 years to build a winning team in NWSL, but they've also admitted they don't have 3 years. I think they have to show progress this year, because this is the roster they wanted, this is the coach they wanted, and now they're just going to have to put it all together. And I'm not sure, when you look at the roster, that I would have a lot of confidence that this is a team that is set to dominate games in all phases.
Since you're touching on the player personnel, let's stay on that subject for a second. A lot of player moves happened during and after the 2025 season. We touched on it briefly last week. Again, Kristen Press, Ali Riley, Alyssa Thompson, Alana Kennedy, Katie Zellum, Amy Vignola, Megan Reed, Miyabi Mariah, Madison Hammond, all are gone. Sarah Dorson came and went. Now the team has acquired late in the season and during the offseason Svendis Jonsdottir, Neely Martin, Hina Sugita, Evelyn Shores, Hannah Siebert, and Priska Chilufya. At this point, how do you rate each position on the field, and where will the scoring come from in 2026?
Well, I think it's really top heavy with strikers. I mean, they're stacked up front. You mentioned Sifula and Jonsdottir of Iceland. Claire Emsley will apparently be back after maternity leave. She won't start the season, but they're Scottish national team captain, and we haven't even talked about Riley Kiernan, the leading scorer last year, Rookie of the Year candidate, Sydney Leroux. A World Cup champion. She's taking a break to focus on her mental health, but she's signed for next season. June Endo, who was also supposed to play it forward, I see her moving back to the midfield. The midfield, again, there's a lot of good players. You mentioned Sagita is going to be there. Niehaus from Brazil. It's inexperienced in the midfield, though. They have a 21-year-old Evelyn Shores, teenager Kennedy Fuller. So you look at the defense, which is not bad. Sarah Gordon will now be the team leader with Ali Riley and Christian Press gone. Savvy King is a good young player. She, remember, had the heart condition that cost her most of last season. She's expected to be back. I think they need more depth and more bite on the back line. They've lost Megan Reed, the veteran backliner, and Giselle Thompson, who will be back. She's more of a winger, really, than a stay-at-home defender. So I think they need to add on defense. I think they look pretty good in midfield, maybe a little bit more experience. They're stacked at forward. Maybe that'll give them a chance to make a transaction if they want, or again, move some of those more versatile players back into a midfield position. Goalkeeper, to me, is a big question as well. Angelina Anderson, she started last season in national team camp and was looked at as a possible national team player. Then she went out and had a career low 68% save percentage. She had a 1.3 goals against average. She's only 23, but I need to see more from her. But at 23, she has a chance to develop still. I think that's not the finished product. She'll fight Hannah Siebert for the starting role at goalkeeper in camp. But Hannah Siebert's a sort of a question mark, too. She started her career in Norway, then had a 4-year break where she didn't play professionally. She did play 4 games for Angel City last year, played pretty well. I'm not so sure. I would consider the goalkeeper position a little bit unsettled at this point. I think Angelina Anderson probably the favorite, but again, we need to see some more from her if this team is going to be successful.
Kevin, it's good to see you. Happy New Year. I'm normally used to seeing the back of your head via sitting behind you during the LAFC press conferences or up in the press box, but it's good to see you, my man.
Sit in front of me anytime.
Well, in front of you, if we were at LAFC in the press box, that would mean I'd be out the window.
Okay, well.
Okay, all right. So I'll take that as a backhand. That's fine, too. That's fine, too. All right, you kind of touched upon the next question I did want to ask, because, yes, the goalkeeping scenario at Angel City has been interesting. Angelina did exactly that you said she did. Hannah Siebert came in, but had looked pretty solid in the vast majority of her performances, with the one weaker one. And obviously, the back and forth between the two, like that, could be considered problematic, obviously hurting the confidence of somebody like Hannah Siebert. But ultimately, why do you think they did what they did with the goalkeeper situation?
Well, they tried a number of different goalkeepers. It wasn't just the two. Those are the two they wound up with heading into camp this year. It's an interesting situation. I think Angelina Anderson is a very talented player, and again, very young, still learning. Obviously, she has some tools. She wouldn't have been called in the national team camp if people didn't see something there. Hannah Siebert, again, an older player. She's 30, but far less experience as far as playing in games and things. Far less experience than Angelina Anderson. So you kind of look at that as, is Hannah Siebert the one that's supposed to be the mentor that come in and sort of show Angelina Anderson the ropes? Or again, you talk about confidence. If at this point you sit Angelina Anderson and said, yeah, you were the starter last year. You were the person, you were the one that we were going to ride. And now we brought in this 30-year-old who has about a dozen games of professional experience, and we're going to make her the starter. What does that do to Angelina Anderson's confidence? So it's an interesting sort of a delicate situation. I think you have to look at Angelina Anderson and say, you're the starter, and Hannah Siebert's going to be the person that's going to help you out and work with you, daily in training and those kind of, even though she has less experience, she's an older, more mature player. Or do you just say, look, again, we have to win now, and we're not looking at developing Angelina Anderson as someone who's going to be our starting goalkeeper for 3 or 4 seasons. We're looking at winning right now, and this particular goalkeeper gives us the best chance. It's sort of an interesting situation.
Interesting situation indeed. A lot of stuff to be yet unfolded over at Angel City, and that being the case, let's transition on over to the Galaxy. Now, before we look at the offseason and look ahead, I'd like to get your take on Greg Vanney. As a coach, he made the playoffs 7 times in 9 seasons. He's got 2 MLS Cups in his Supporters Shield. He's also a former MLS and CONCACAF Coach of the Year. How should we think of last season in terms of his legacy? Do we pretend it didn't happen? Is it an anomaly? Should he have lost his job at some point? What do you make of Vanney's performance last season?
Well, I never wanted to call for someone to lose their job, because I feel like if I was smart enough to be the coach, I would be the coach. So I'm not going to be too critical. But I will say, and you can read into this whatever you want, name another first division league in the world where a coach gets off to a winless start through 16 games, no wins at all, and gets a 3-year contract extension. I mean, what does that say? That doesn't matter? The results don't matter? Hey, everybody, buy your tickets, come out, cheer for our team. But if we lose, it doesn't matter. We're going to give this guy more money. We're going to make him one of the wealthiest head coaches in MLS, and he hasn't won a game this year. So go figure. His time, and he was brought back from Toronto to the Galaxy. He was an original Galaxy player, was also a World Cup defender. So, a guy with a really good resume. In Toronto, won the only treble in MLS history, came to the Galaxy, and the idea was he was going to restore the Galaxy culture and tradition. Well, he won 1 MLS Cup, made the playoffs another year, but he's also had 2 of the 3 worst seasons in Galaxy history as far as wins, losses, goals gave up, all that kind of stuff. Last year was they won 7 games. That's the lowest win total in Galaxy history. They tied the record for most losses. They were 1 goal away from most goals allowed. They didn't win a game on the road. By all extents and purposes, it was a terrible season. And Greg Vanney, has owned up to that. They have been a little bit busy in the offseason, and it's been interesting what they've done. Right now, so far, they've added a holding midfielder or center back, depending on where they want to play him. Another center back. They kicked the tires on a goalkeeper. So but their big need right now is a number 9, I think. And so you look at the way they may be building this team, and I think Greg Vanney has a new way that he wants to play. It looks like the Galaxy may try to go with 3 in the back, which is what Greg Vanney used for a while in Toronto. But it does seem as if the club is focused on defense as opposed to trying to fill that number 9 position. Although the offseason is not over, they have about another 2.5 weeks till training camp starts. Can you believe that training camp starts in about 2.5 weeks?
They don't give us enough time to miss MLS. I mean, shortest offseason ever. Baseball being the longest, and I feel like I end up missing baseball after a while. It hasn't been the case with MLS, in particular now with CONCACAF and all that other stuff. That's neither here nor there. I'm glad you touched upon that subject about the European scenarios with coaches that begin winless, because it is a head-scratcher, I would have ventured to guess, for 90% of the world. But let's talk about player personnel now, Kevin. The Galaxy recently announced the signing of Justin Haak as a free agent, which obviously has a great, from a financial perspective, that's a good move. But tell me how you rate his performance within the Galaxy system. He's young but experienced in MLS, and obviously known for his versatility, reliability, and his tactical discipline. He can play as a holding midfielder. He can play in deeper roles. Like, how does he change the mathematics, the calculus for the club?
Well, before this, we talked about this last time, I believe. They added Jacob Glasnes, who they signed or traded for. He's going to make $1.3 million next year. He's a veteran, early 30s midfielder. center back. The Galaxy went into the offseason with Zonka still there, Yoshida under contract. So they add Glesnes, and he's going to, at that salary, he's going to start. And now they add Justin Haak, who can play center back, can play holding midfielder. So there's something going on here. There'd be some more moves. I think Zonka and or Yoshida will either move. Yoshida's talked about going back to play in Japan. The Galaxy have the opportunity to buy out one of those contracts. But you talk about Justin Haak. This guy is interesting in a number of different ways. Aside from what he brings on the field, let's just talk about the contract. He played 10 years in the New York City system, if you include the academy and the first team. Last year, he started every game. He was 5th in the league in minutes for an outfield player. It was his first season as a starter. I mean, and he made $265,000 last year. New York City wanted to sign him to a long-term deal, and the money was better than the Galaxy. So they were giving him more years and more money than the Galaxy. The Galaxy were limited because they were signing him as a free agent. Were limited to what they could pay him. They can pay him about $850,000, which my understanding is that's what the contract is. It's a year with an option to buy. So why would Haak at his age, 20, I think he's 24 now, why would he turn down a long-term contract with more money? Because he also got some interest from Europe. And I think looking at him as a center back, holding midfielder, a defensive player at a young age, he's a guy that would be very attractive, I think, to some European clubs. And he did get some interest in Europe. I think what he and his agent are looking at is, look, after the World Cup, we know there's a lot of player movement. Guys retire, guys move on to other clubs. They're hanging in there through the World Cup. I think he thinks that he may have an opportunity to go to Europe and didn't want to get tied down in a long-term deal. The Galaxy also apparently have a handshake agreement with him of if you don't go to Europe and you play well for us, when that option year comes, we will give you the kind of money New York City would have given you. So that it's kind of like a little handshake agreement looking to the future. Very interesting to see how that plays out. But what does it do for the Galaxy? Well, again, it gives them a versatile guy. Again, could play holding midfielder, could play at center back. Gives them a chance to play 3 in the back if they want, with a couple of wingers, Yamani and John Nelson. They have some opportunity to do some things on the wings. Aude coming back as well. So defensively, it makes them look good. We've talked about the Galaxy trying to build that spine. They're going to get Ricky Puig back. He'll be in the midfield. They now they look like they've got some real depth at center back. Expect some more moves just to make the salary work. They did kick the tires on Dane St. Clair as a goalkeeper before he went to Inter Miami. So they are potentially exploring options at goal. They gave up 66 goals last season, second worst total of all time for the Galaxy. Another thing they need to do, though, is they really need to find a number 9. They have Christian Ramirez right now. Greg Vanny is on the record as saying he's just not mobile enough for the kind of way that they want to play. So expect them to go out and get a number 9, maybe to look at goalkeeper, and then to make a couple of moves with Yoshida, Zonka, maybe Nascimento, probably not going to come back on loan for Botafogo. I think he's going to stay there. But they do need to fill that number 9 position, and they've got 2.5 weeks to do it.
Just to kind of piggyback of what you're saying real quick, and then I'll let Gunnar say something. Maybe Mayachida's smart going back to Japan, because apparently you can play up till you're 58 years old if you're healthy
exactly.
enough. Shout out King Kazu, man. That's crazy.
Well, a couple of things about Yoshida, though. He's going to make he made $844 last year, and it's a 2-year contract, $844,000. So we would expect that that's about what he's supposed to get next year. He told me he wanted to stay in LA through the World Cup. He thought he had some opportunities as a broadcaster, perhaps here. With Japan coming to play, but all of a sudden, opportunity to play in the Japanese league, to return to the Japanese league, came up. He thinks he might have an outside chance at the national team to play in the World Cup. So all of a sudden, he's got a little interested in Japan. The Galaxy would very much like to get rid of that salary because, Yoshida would be on the bench to start the season, and that salary is a wash with Haak. So, you get under the salary cap right away. But the one thing is, Yoshida is the glue in that dressing room. They can't afford to bring Diego Fagundes back now after signing Jacob Glesnes. That's the money that the Fagundes money went to Glesnes. So I don't think Fagundes is coming back. They need some leadership in the locker room. They don't have it right now. Gabriel Peck doesn't have the language skills to do it. Joseph Paintsil is not really the kind of guy that does that. Ricky Puig is not really a leader in that way, where he, where he sort of takes the whole team under his shoulders. It's got to be Yoshida, or someone else has to emerge. And so that's where maybe Yoshida where the Galaxy have to swallow hard if they decide to lose him, because now they have no leadership. And we saw what happened when Sasha Claysson left. Sasha Claysson was not a guy who played a lot, but he was a leader. And once they lost that glue, they went out and had that 8-win season.
Yep. Coming back to Yoshida for just a second, I'll add, if my information is correct, it might have been his hometown club in Japan that contacted him with that, which, I mean, if any of us could play for our hometown club professionally in our country that we came from, I think that's hard to pass up. But since we're talking about player personnel, let's do the same with LAFC. Let's talk about the most recent development, right? LAFC signs Jacob Schaffelburg, a Canada international, a dynamic mobile winger, cost the club a decent amount of money. With Son and Bouanga up top now, how does Schaffelburg, in your opinion, impact the way this team can now play? How do you rate the move overall? And what does it mean for, say, a Nate Ordaz or a David Martinez?
Well, I mean, Martinez is sort of the guy of the future, right? They're still kind of grooming him. I thought Ordaz was a really, really good player. I still think he's a really good player. He's kind of fallen out of favor, though. It seemed at the end of the season, he was playing a lot at the beginning, not so much at the end. Remember, he had that big goal against Inter Miami in CONCACAF play. I really thought he was the guy that was on his way up. And then he sort of, like I said, fell out of favor. We'll see what happens. We got Marc Dos Santos coming in. Is he still going to play a 4-3-3? Is he still going to have 3 men up top? If so, Schaffelburg, Ordaz, and especially Martinez, I think will get some playing time. The problem, though, is, those 3 players, Martinez, Schaffelburg, and Ordaz are young players who want to make their mark. And they are going to have to sort of get out of the way and let Son and Bouanga cook, and do what they do. So there's only one ball. You can only play with one ball. And it's going to be hard, I think, for some of those young players to make the mark that they want to make. I think this is more than anything, probably a depth move. We're going to lose Bouanga. LAFC is going to lose Bouanga. They're going to lose Son, certainly, for the World Cup, and with all the games they're going to play in CONCACAF, MLS with that long break around the World Cup and then a compacted schedule on both ends, I think they're going to need some help up front. I don't know that we're going to see Bouanga play every game like he has the last few seasons. And certainly Son's going to need some time off around the Olympics. So to me, it looks like a depth move, but a really big pickup. And when you look at Ordaz and Martinez, I don't think Martinez is going anywhere. We'll see what Dos Santos wants to do with Ordaz, but these guys become assets. A coach, a baseball general manager, told me a long time ago that when you draft or sign a guy, that doesn't necessarily, he becomes an asset for you, and an asset can be used on the field to win games. An asset can be used to trade, to get to trade the guy and bring in somebody that you really need, or bring in money or whatever. So they do have, in my mind, 5 guys who can start it forward. Do they need 5 guys who can start it forward, or does one of them then become an asset where they trade him and maybe get a defender or somebody else they need?
Yep. Since we're already looking ahead, let's talk about 2026, right? LAFC, we talked about last week having re-signed Lloris. We haven't talked about it, but they've re-signed Chouanier in the midfield. Now Schaffelburg comes in. Given the club obviously also features the most dynamic and explosive attacking duo in the league in Bouanga and Son up top, do you currently see any urgent personnel needs? And if not, how would you maybe slightly tweak the current roster to put it in a position where it can lift an MLS Cup or maybe other trophies in 2026?
Well, the midfield looks pretty good. Tillman and Delgado, especially. Delgado is kind of the guy that makes that offense go. In talking with both the Galaxy and LAFC, who face similar problems with the schedule, and talking to John Thorrington, I think the focus is going to be on depth. The back line, if you look at the starters, looks pretty good. Maybe add another guy, a depth piece, because you can't play, when you have 3 games a week, you can't play every game. And the back line is a little bit old, Holland's head's, in early 30s. Segura's got some miles on him. They do have some young players too, but again, I think adding a little bit of some depth pieces, but looking at the style of play that Marc Dos Santos is going to want to play. What you don't want to do is bring in the depth piece, and then when that particular person starts, you have to change the way you play, because then the other 9 players, the other 9 outfield players have to do something different that maybe they're not comfortable with. I do like the signing of Urice. I've heard a lot of criticism about that. Yes, he's old, but remember he didn't play for like 2.5 years or 2 years at Tottenham rather. So he's got, he may be a little bit fresher than someone at his age. He's played really well in MLS. I mean, I don't see what the problem is. I think you get a guy who's the all-time World Cup leader in starts and I think victories as well. That's a pretty good guy to have on your team and in your locker room. And I think he's become a leader. And so I thought that signing was pretty good. Obviously, it's going to take a bigger hit. We don't know what he's going to make yet, but he came in making $350,000 his first 2 seasons. That was like 26th or 27th in MLS for goalkeepers, a guy with his pedigree. So I hope that he got a raise, to reward him for that. When you look at the roster, though, right now, there's no one behind him. So Urice may be the one guy who's going to play every game.
Couldn't agree with you more on Lloris. Agree on Delgado. Tillman, on the other hand, it's a debate that we could have, but not a debate that we're going to sustain right now because, well, we're out of time, and I got myself a beautiful Bloody Mary waiting for me to bring in 2026. Well, I've got Empire Strykers coming on. Kevin, if you want to come over, we can knock back a couple of shots of tequila, whatever it is. I will remember that you wanted me to jump out the window, though, so I will have to remember.
Well, no, I didn't want you to necessarily jump, just kind of hover.
Yeah, well, there's people out there that would enjoy that, but I know you wouldn't let me fall, Kevin. I know you couldn't have that on your conscience one way or another. But anyway, appreciate your time. Happy New Year, and yeah, we'll see you. We'll see you soon.
Happy New Year to everybody.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Happy New Year.
All right, dynamic interview that we had with Kevin Baxter. The man knows his stuff, Tim. There's no question about it. But look, there's a couple things I could say I disagreed with him. He talks about LAFC's midfield and how he feels that Marky Delgado's solid. Timothy Tillman, to me, is one aspect that I don't necessarily agree with. Look, Timothy Tillman played well enough to get a call up to the United States men's national team. That kind of made me scratch my head. While he may be good defensively and he's been solid at setting up his teammates offensively, what Timothy Tillman has lacked that LAFC needs with the kind of offense they run is the ability to be a threat offensively. Anytime he gets a look on target, Timothy Tillman is not a scary presence when he has his feet on the ball and tries to take a shot on goal. I hate to say it. He's got Star Wars Stormtrooper shooting position, never on target.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on this one, Philly. One of the things that Tillman does not have, he's great, like you said, at setting people up. He's solid defensively, but he does not have that booming power shot from 18, 22 yards out to put it on frame and make the goalkeeper look silly because he didn't get to it in time. It's just not there.
No, it's not. I mean, to quote the great late Bob Uecker in the movie Major League, anytime he fires one, the only thing I think of in my head is I hear Ueck's voice just a bit outside. Yeah, no kidding. Like all the way up upper row where Uncle Franz hides the good schnapps on non-game days. But you mentioned the term keeper. Another thing I wanted to bring up, he talked about Angel City's goalkeeping story. And look, we might be a little biased here because we had Hannah Siebert on the show, and I got to call a game with her at UC Riverside with her as my analyst. He mentioned like the difference between the two, Anderson and Siebert. He mentioned that Siebert, not enough experience, but I beg to differ. She played in Europe. She played Champions League. She has far more experience than Angelina does. The one thing he touched upon was the confidence factor. Now, obviously, we had a managerial change. Alexander Strauss comes in the second part of the season to take over, whereas the powers that be were doing things one way. Mm-hmm. But you've got a young keeper in the likes of Anderson, right? And then you bring on a veteran keeper like a Siebert who's from this area, starred at Pepperdine, is a Hall of Famer at Pepperdine. What does it say to each of those keepers? Because it's got to leave some question marks for both of them. Anderson not necessarily feeling confident that she's the number one, and then Siebert thinking to herself, well, why the heck did you bring me out here? Yeah, it's cool to be back in California, but what are your intentions? Because she was playing very well until the one game where she didn't, and then she got replaced back to Anderson. I don't know. What does that do for a keeper's confidence?
I think it kind of shatters it. I really do. I think if you've got a keeper that is playing really, really well and then you have one off game, it's kind of like pulling the goalkeeper in hockey, right? You pull them out in the second period after they get shelled. What do you do the very next game? They are the number one starter. And even if they get shelled in that next game, you leave them in there because that's the only way you build confidence. So some of the choices that were made, I think there was a little bit of, hey, we really need to make the playoffs. And then probably about the last 4 or 5 games, they're like, nah, maybe we don't have to make the playoffs. And maybe it's better that we don't this year so that they can regroup, figure out what they're really going to do, and figure out who the true number one is next year, Philly.
I think with the full preseason training camp, a lot of those answers are going, a lot of the questions are going to be answered. Who's actually going to win it? You know, if Anderson solidifies herself as a starter, then at least that sets the tone for the rest of the season. And if Seabird beats her out, all that's going to do is motivate Anderson to go out there and get back on there. I mean, because she played well enough to get a national team call-up in addition. So it's just one of those stories that you have to kind of keep your eye on. That's the unfolding drama. Plenty of interesting drama happening at Angel City. And it's not just ACFC that's had an issue with their goalkeeper. I think the only team in Los Angeles that's really had their solidification is LAFC with Hugo Lloris. But the LA Galaxy have had their struggles too. Obviously, you know, with John McCarthy being a goalkeeper, an MVP in the MLS Finals, finally getting some legitimate starts the year after LAFC. But then, you know, now you got Mitrovic, McCarthy's gone. I mean, that's just another chaotic saga within its own right.
Yeah, and I think the way the Galaxy handled that was just an utter disaster. If you knew that McCarthy was not going to be your number one goalkeeper and you're going to put Mitrovic in, you sell him in the offseason when he's at his peak value, and you go get a striker because you lose a guy like Dejan Joveljic, right? He goes off and scores another 20 goals for guys in the Midwest, and you don't replace that guy, and you don't get rid of McCarthy until mid-season, and you get a third of what you could have gotten for him. And so when you have something like that happen, I think it screws up the entire goalkeeper room for the rest of the season. And while Mitrovic was the out-and-out number one, I think his confidence was broken as well because they weren't playing very well, at least at the very start of the season. And they had a very good back half. You know, they were above 500. But the reality is they could have been a better team had they cleared up that goalkeeper room early in that season or preseason.
I mean, that's debatable as well. Obviously, you know, offensively, they weren't exactly a juggernaut either. I mean, McCarthy didn't play poorly. I thought McCarthy actually had a much better showing in between the sticks than Mitrovic did. Now, I may be slightly biased, obviously, with his tenure being an LAFC player and having seen him succeed with LAFC, hoisting a cup. Obviously, he did that as well with the Galaxy. But in my opinion, I do think J-Mac was the better keeper. Is he older? Mm-hmm. Yes. Is Mitrovic potentially somebody that they would bill as the future of things? I don't think J-Mac is long for the scenario, although in goalkeeper years, he's still pretty young. I mean, look over at Italy. Gianluigi Buffon made it to his 40s. Now, I'm not saying that J-Mac is Gianluigi Buffon. Don't get me wrong, but I do think he has stood out much better than Mitrovic did. And the back line didn't do either of those keepers any kind of justice. Obviously, Ricky Puig coming back in the next season will change things. I don't foresee the Galaxy having a repeat performance coming up into 2026 as they had in 25.
No, and I'm with you there. You know, they played much better towards that last half, and with Puig coming back, and they're going to make the playoffs in 2026. I don't have any doubt of that. They'll be top 6, in my opinion. But they did need to do something with that goalkeeper room. You had JT, you had Mitrovic, and you had Johnny Mack in the goalkeeper room.
All right, National Core. National Core is one of the nation's largest nonprofit affordable housing developers and a proud sponsor of the Major Arena Soccer League's Empire Strykers. At National Core, they believe that soccer has the power to transform lives just like they do. They believe in building strong communities on and off the field. To learn more about National Core and their mission, head on over to nationalcore.org. Season tickets, by the way, folks, speaking of the Empire Strykers, are available at theempirestrykers.com. Strikers with a Y, season and individual. Now, that being said, we get to wrap with another individual, Empire Strykers goalkeeper Claysson De Lima, who is gracious and kind enough with his time to hang out with you and I, and you got to be gracious to hang out with you or I, Timmy. We're not that cool. We're not that cool at all. And there's probably some listeners out there nodding their head right now. No, they're not that cool. All right, let's go right to that interview with Claysson De Lima. We're now joined by a man who has finally moved off the injury list this week by the Empire Strykers and seems set to log his first minutes in net this season. After leading the club to a 2021 MASL Final Series and winning Goalkeeper of the Year in the process, he missed 23-24 due to visa issues, but returned to the squad last season and bagged 4 assists as a goalkeeper. It's so awesome to finally have with us the Empire's Brazilian fan favorite, Claysson De Lima. Claysson, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Philly. Appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Like
it only took us, 5-6 years to finally get you on, Claysson? How long has it been?
Come on, you gotta, you gotta give me a break because, English, it's hard. It's hard to, feel comfortable doing interview, but finally I'm getting there. You know me for like a few years already. So, before my English it wasn't there, but now whenever you guys wanted to have me here, I'm more than comfortable, and I'll be available for you guys to having me here. It's a pleasure.
All right, be careful what you wish for, because I may just have to pull on you on a multitude of occasions. And to your English, yes, it's improved dramatically. Dare I say you speak it better than people who have grown up here. I really mean that. It's come a long way.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. I worked hard for that. I really worked hard for that.
Again, you're finally off the injured reserve list after dealing with, I believe, a knee injury for the first month of the season. First of all, congratulations. Let me ask you, how did the recovery go, and how are you feeling now?
The recovery went pretty well. Was a MECL second grade injury. Was the second week of preseason, so the doctor told me 4 weeks to get cleared to at least start training with ball, and it was exactly what happened. This last Monday I got cleared to start training. Unfortunately, this week, it's a holiday week, so we only got to train Monday and Tuesday, and then we traveled to Milwaukee. But yeah, finally can't wait to see the field. It was unfortunately injury, but thank God it wasn't nothing serious, just a second grade, no injury, no surgery needed. So the rehab went pretty well. They took care of everything, and finally ready to be on the field.
Yeah, that's great, Claysson. Hey, one advantage for us with you not having traveled to Milwaukee is that you were able to watch the game and the entire field from the outside. What's your analysis of the match and why it wasn't quite enough at the end?
Yeah, man, playing Milwaukee, obviously it's never easy. We knew it was going to be a tough game, and once again, we started off pretty well, and then we conceded those 3 goals that I think was preventable, but we couldn't find the right spot to attack, and I think the guys brought the effort to it, but now it's come back tomorrow and train on Friday because we have a big game against San Diego coming up, and try to clear off the attacking part, because I feel like conceding 3 goals indoor, it's a good job by the defense. You just gotta clear off the things on the attack, and I'm pretty sure you're gonna be successful moving forward.
Yeah, and with that, it has been a tough start to the season overall for the Strikers. What's been the most challenging thing for the team this season?
Well, I think we got especially on the moments that we down by 1-2 goals, you gotta play what we see a little bit more, maybe a forward pass, and try to feed the target a little bit more, maybe, and keep it believe. It's indoor. Philly knows, the year that we made it to the championship final, there was a lot of games that we were down by 3-4 goals, and we kept believing and kept going forward and try to find the goal, because indoor it's a very momentum game, and once you find 1 goal, we just saw right now the Milwaukee against Utica. They were down by 4 or 5 goals, and they still came back. I think we gotta find a little bit more of there. Try to find those goals and flip the momentum.
Yeah. So your fellow Strikers keeper, Brian Orozco, has said that he's heard from several opposition players about how they really focus in on the Strikers because you guys have got your innovative tactics, and then they bring a totally different style to the game against you. Is that something you're seeing as well?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're getting, like I said, last year was with something like you said, something new that all the teams were trying to adapt, but in the moment of the play. But now they have all the tape and they get to study the way that we play, and obviously it's making harder on us. We gotta definitely like adapt to, about there a little bit more for sure.
And finally, you already brought it up. Let's look ahead to Saturday at San Diego. Game's going to be on FS2, which is awesome. Main event, primetime live. It's an important one. You'll have to pull off another away win with your rivals in order to avoid dropping to 1-5. The Sockers have made great strides since starting bumpy to the start of the year with a road win over Empire and Tuesday's 8-0 dismantling of Tacoma. What have you seen from San Diego lately, and what are the keys to succeed for you guys?
Against San Diego, you already know it's always a tough game. They have a great squad. And I think for us, the key thing is to forget about the game today. Obviously, try to clean up the things that we have to clean up, and come into San Diego with a fresh mind and believing that we can pull the win again, and come into the game like strong and try to get the lead and go from there.
Well, we certainly believe in you, Claysson, and the team, so we wish you lots of luck. Obviously, this being aired on New Year's Day, all the best. Happy New Year, all the other stuff. And I toast to you, my friend. I'll have a caipirinha in your honor later.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Thank you. Thank you, guys, for having me. I really appreciate it. And Happy New Year's to you guys. Wish you guys a great year with a lot of blessings.
Thanks, Claysson. Happy New Year, buddy.
I got to tell you, I've known Claysson for a number of years now. His English absolutely has improved 180 degrees. When we started that Striking Fury podcast, my wife and I, Panda, he didn't want to come on the show because he felt self-conscious about his English. Oh, my God, he speaks English better than some people who grew up here.
Yeah, for sure. Now we just need to learn how to speak Portuguese, Philly, and make them a little bit more comfortable.
All I know how to say is caipirinha, which is obviously a very popular drink in Brazil. I can go for a couple of caipirinhas right now. And some churrascaria as well. Look, let's talk about the Strikers' performance.
Mm-hmm.
Defensively, let's start with a glass half full approach. Defensively, they only allowed the mighty Milwaukee Wave to score 3 times, which is great. In most cases, that'll earn you a dub. But on the other end of the equation, when you only score 1 goal, that's not going to enable you to be placed into a position where you can find yourself a dub. The Strikers just dropped their 4th in a row. What is going on?
Yeah, this one was tough to watch, Philly, because, and Claysson mentions it, that once the other teams get up by a goal or 2, they can kind of just sit back and play a much more defensive-minded game, and they don't have to score 4, 7, 8 goals like you have to in a regular indoor soccer match, because it just seems that the Strikers are playing a lot higher umbrella. They're playing up near the center circle versus down towards the arc, and it's impossible to score from the center circle, Philly.
Are you talking umbrellas because it's raining profusely out in your neck of the woods? Yeah. Is that why you're talking about bringing out an umbrella?
It's a soggy Southern California afternoon there, Philly, yes.
Yeah, it's our version of torrential storms that are going on in the Midwest and places like Utica, by the way. Crazy game that was. A lot of great games, actually, within the MASL. I mean, Randy Martinez, formerly of the Empire Strykers, had the game winner to help St. Louis beat the Kansas City Comets. Crazy. But anyway, I digress. Willie B., the goalkeeper for Milwaukee, made 11 saves. And as we were looking at the Strikers' offense, believe it or not, they ended up outshooting the Milwaukee Wave. It was neck and neck in the first half. Obviously, we have a 1-1 scoreline that the stats eerily similar. In the third quarter, not a lot of action, but the Empire Strykers would end up having 4 shots to the Milwaukee Wave's 3. Unfortunately, in the third quarter, the Wave were able to capitalize. When you fire 3 shots and score 2, that's pretty darn good. But then in the fourth quarter, the Strikers ended up having 8 shots, which at the end of the day put them up throughout the duration, the entirety of the game, 21-14. But it didn't look that way, Tim, in particular with the last minute or so, the last 90 seconds. They had the 6th attacker on. No shots fired off in the last frame. What is that? I mean, wasting time to find the space. Obviously very concerned with not conceding a goal when you utilize the 6th attacker. But come on, at that point, 90 seconds, the game's done. Fire at will, for Christ's sakes.
Yeah, absolutely. Fire it off the boards, shoot it off the glass. Now, there was a little bit of bad luck. The Strikers did hit the inside of the post early in the match. But the reality is, you just said it, 90 seconds and not a shot on goal. You can't have that. You got to be doing something. You got to crash the net, chip the ball in, put 5 guys in the box and have one guy. You're down by 2 goals. Who cares you lose by 2 or lose by 5? You got to put the ball on frame and get it into the net somehow, some way, Philly.
On a couple of occasions, Milwaukee's broadcasters, Wayne and Kramer, I love those guys, by the way. Great.
Yeah,
dudes.
they're great.
I
Unbelievable.
Kramer all the time. But they had mentioned the Strikers holding possession and being patient, much to their detriment. And when you hear that once, you could scratch your head and go, all right. But then when you hear it a couple of times, it obviously becomes a narrative because they're calling the game. They're seeing exactly what you and I are seeing and thinking exactly the way you and I are thinking, but actually going out on the air and saying it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And that's what I really like about that announcing team is they were calling a spade a spade. It was great. They just sat there and they said, hey, they've got possession. They sit on it for 40%, 60-40% of the game with the ball, but they don't do anything with it. And now that there's a bunch of tape on the Strikers, have these other teams really figured out what they're doing? That they always going to push the ball down to the right-hand boards and they're going to have Orozco put it in across the net or on frame. What does Obasi need to do, Philly, do you think, just in general terms, to break what everybody else has figured out about the Strikers?
Well, listen, I don't know. I mean, the first thing would be there was no Marco Fabian. Now, Marco Fabian, obviously a key contributor to the Strikers' offense last year and the year before. Marco Fabian, a goal-scoring machine, and his ability to pass the ball. And when he's on the field, he obviously unlocks Justin Stinson. Was it a mistake to not bring Marco? Was it smarter just to save him for the game against San Diego? Obviously, he's older. We don't see in practice what Obasi sees. Not sure what the recovery time is for Marco, but you'd think that with a game on December 31st, now between a travel day, and January 3rd, that Marco would have had plenty of time to recover. Again, coach's decision, I'm not questioning it, but was it a mistake leaving him beside against a team as talented as Milwaukee?
I think in a race to the finish with only 24 games this season, I think if everybody's available when you got to play everybody. You put your best team on the field at the time. If that means that he plays at 80% versus a San Diego, fine. You got to do it. You ship them out to Milwaukee. You have them play. They put them on the plane home, and they get their rest. I think it's a total mistake not to bring your best players to every game. They're professionals. You mentioned it. He's a little bit of an older player, but one of the reasons why they signed him is he's a goal-scoring machine, and he does unlock Stinson, like you said, Philly.
Yeah, I mean, So again, a head scratcher. I'm not an X's and O's guy. Otherwise, I would be an X's and O's guy. But the people I guess I feel the worst for are the fans. I mean, it was the first time that the Empire Strykers team/organization has ever made the trip to Milwaukee to play in Panther Arena. So they missed out on getting to see somebody as incredible as Marco. That's a bummer. Now, okay, again, we talked about the glass. Now we're kind of going at it at a glass half empty perspective, but look, Berto Palmer standing on his head. With the exception of the giveaway, defensively, the Strikers have looked pretty good. Now, is that because you've got great players like Berto Palmer, which obviously is the case, but are they conceding less goals as a result of the back line being efficient, or is it more a result of the team handling possession?
I think it's because the defense is efficient. I think it's better that they're that way. They understand how to keep the ball out of the net. And you got a guy like Berto, who was just on the show recently, playing on it, like you said, standing on his head. He's playing really, really well at the highest level he's ever played at. Already 2-time defensive player of the week, and the season's 5 weeks old. So I think it's one of those things where not having conceding goals should lead to breakouts and should lead to scoring goals. But the Strikers just aren't doing that. The keeper today played on his head. You mentioned it. He had 8 saves in the
11.
Fourth quarter alone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, he played incredible. But the reality is you've got to have better shots on frame. If the guy's getting 8 shots, there were a couple that he, jumped and made leaping saves. I think at least 5 of them were direct shots on target. And yes, they're a save, but they're easy saves, as they like to say, Philly.
What I loved, speaking of Willie B, the goalkeeper of Milwaukee, at the end of the game, and you'd have to go back to watch it. It wasn't anything the broadcasters mentioned or anything that you see on the stat reel. At the end of the game, Walter Diaz of the Empire Strykers gets tackled hard, and he goes down mid-turf. The player that actually went towards him to make sure he was okay and helped him up was Willie B, William Bonaheny. I noticed several Strykers players go by Walter Diaz, pat him on the back, check on him, but it was the opposition's goalkeeper that went and did that. So shout out to Willie B for doing that, and he got Diaz back up on his toes. But, it's I don't know. You see that, right, from the perspective of Strykers? Not trying to instill any kind of controversy, but why is the opposition's goalkeeper, who is nowhere near midfield at that point, helping up one of our players?
Yeah, it's kind of a head scratcher for me too, Philly. You mentioned it pre-show about that, and it's interesting. Is it because the Strykers aren't having any fun because they've lost 4 straight games? I think what should have happened is like 5 striker dudes should have run over and helped them up, because that's how you start having fun, because you start playing as a team.
I don't think they don't play as a team, but like you just start seeing stuff like that. It's a 4-game losing streak. You start to look at all the other variables, not just the performance on the field, just the body language of the players around. I would say if you go back and watch that game, take note of that. Not to say that that's anything, but I don't know. But that being said, if you want to take in the old Ted Lasso ideology, and if you're watching, I got my Ted Lasso Funko Pop right here. Believe, and at the same time, be a goldfish. And that's exactly what the Strykers are going to have to do. Get on the plane. Sucks that New Year's Day is going to be spent traveling back to the Inland Empire. But then after that, they got to train and get ready, because they welcome in the San Diego Sockers, a team that they beat on the road. First time San Diego's ever lost at home in their new arena. And it was the Empire Strykers. But since then, they got back, started to play at a much higher and cagier level, and they skunked the Tacoma Stars, a team that was undefeated up to that point. Boris Pardo getting his first shutout, incredible. Seba Mendez and formerly of the Ontario Fury, Charlie Golasso, took care of business. But, oh my gosh, when people thought that things were sour in Oceanside, when you skunk a team in indoor soccer, that's no easy feat.
No, and the Strykers skunked the team last season. To skunk a team in indoor, like you say, is a almost mythical feat, because it just doesn't happen. But you mentioned it, Charlie Golazzo is just playing out of his head. Mendez is playing great. Mendez and Charlie had 3 goals and 4 points respectively. So now they're going to be looking at this and how to stop those guys this coming weekend, Saturday night, down in Oceanside.
Yeah, and look, San Diego's also without a bunch of players. Like Chris Todd's going to be out a couple of weeks, as per the broadcast, broken finger. They don't have Leo de Oliveira, who absolutely killed the Empire in the home game at Toyota Arena a couple of weeks ago. Juan Salazar hasn't been there. I mean, they've obviously Pee-wee is gone for the rest of the season with the Achilles. They're still playing with so many talented players. I mean, there's a deep all-star roster, but the Strykers can manage to get the dub. That'll be massive. And that's going to be the first time our sport is showcased on FS2. The MASL in the month of January has got 6 broadcasts on the Fox network, 1 on FS2, the other 5 on Fox Soccer Plus. Yours truly will be on the call on January the 8th and the 22nd. You beat San Diego at San Diego again. I would say a lot of these mishaps can be forgotten.
Yeah, winning cures a lot of ills, right, Philly? And so if they can come out, do a very good showing, again, this is going to be a nationwide broadcast, so everybody in the world can go see this thing on FS2. And I think if they come out, make a good showing and beat San Diego in Oceanside again, I think it'll jumpstart their season.
Fingers crossed. So keep an eye out on that. All right, let's go transition on to another club that we talk about on this show. The boys below the orange curtain. Orange County Soccer Club, my man, you are the king of all things OCSC. You rep the OC. You live in the OC. What's going on down there?
Well, it's been a little quiet this week, between Christmas and New Year's, and but there's been some big signings. Nico Benalcazar, Orange County Soccer Club's Player of the Year, re-signed. He'll be back for next season. Stephen Kelly. These are the types of players that they need to bring back, Philly, on a consistent basis. They made Tet Cadano their number one goalkeeper coming into this season. He was the star of that shootout the shootout win late in the season. I think this is one of the big things that is really going to keep Orange County on the tips of people's tongues this coming season, and having guys like those come back.
Well, they might have a little bit of anxiety because if you go to social media, you can catch Nico Benalcazar hanging with his homies out in Deutschland of Borussia Mönchengladbach. Easily my favorite team name to say. D. Follin. He was hanging out with his homies, Gio Reyna and Joe Scally. Is that indicative of something? Is it a microcosm of ways to think? Does Nico Benalcazar, outgrow his role in Orange County? Should he be playing at a higher level? Maybe is he good enough to play in the Zweite Bundesliga or at the bottom level of the Bundesliga? I don't know. How long would you say he's in for USL? Because I think he's a talented kid that probably could do well for himself somewhere and playing on a higher platform.
Yeah, and I think those, you mentioned it, those guys are his best friends. He grew up playing with these guys, and so he's known these guys forever. Forever for a 23-year-old, right? 22-year-old. These things, it's 5-6 years. But the reality is, he could be playing at a higher level. Do I think he's there right now? No. Do I think he'll be there by 6 months into the season? Absolutely. I think if he is not in, or at least getting very strong looks by European teams and potentially some of the MLS teams, I think to think that way is foolish. I think that these guys he's already being looked at by some of these higher level teams, and Orange County does have that pathway to Europe. So I think it's really, the future is super bright for Nico.
And the one thing that could be said about American players in Germany is they often get a lot of run for their money. So many Americans have gone to Germany, adapted those systems, and thrive. You have to look no further than AC Milan to really understand that truly, in that of Christian Pulisic. But hey, look, Germany's American friendly. Who would have thunk it? At the very least, in the football territory of things. Orange County Soccer Club, obviously, they're still selling season tickets. They're not still doing those ownership things, are they, that they used to do back in the day?
Nope. And here's the ownership jersey, right? It's got who's got a share of the team. They're not doing that, but the season tickets are on sale right now. You can get a great deal if you hop on over the next couple of days. The big thing is you can really get close, and you can get season seats in the supporter section to every game, all 17 games, for under $160. I mean, where else in the pantheon of sports, other than the Strikers, are you going to be able to go to that many games for that inexpensive a price? Free parking, the whole bit. They play at a great stadium.
Absolutely. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us here at Soccer and 60, brought to you by SAC Health System. Don't worry, your friendly neighborhood scarf will be back to host the next show. Just wanted to wish you all a happy and healthy new year. 2026 is upon us. Let's have an unbelievable year. And just want to, again, say thank you on behalf of myself, Philly, Timmy K, our producers, Gunnar and Christian, Scarf, and Ananda, Rob. Nothing but love. Don't forget to subscribe on all your podcast platforms at the Empire Strykers. Subscribe as well, and we'll see you in 2026. Hasta la pasta, hasta la bye-bye. Mwah. Bye-bye.
Mwah.